What's going on, everybody out there? Hope you're having a fantastic, what is today? Thursday, right? I'm here in the States, June 13th. I'm here joined today by one of the best devs on PulseChain, I would argue, a creative that's found creative tokenomics and built out an entire ecosystem that's competing with the likes of Atropa and also complementing it in some ways. And then he's right up there, volume and liquidity depth and all that stuff is like pretty good across the Grays ecosystem. So like it's pretty cool that I'm having him on today to talk about kind of how all the different tokens work and interplay, and share some of our learnings on what development life is like. That's kind of been my focus lately, is getting pulled into the dev conversation with all kinds of different teams on different projects. And it's definitely a lot different than TA. TA is kind of more just watching price action, but PulseChain is kind of unique because it gives you the opportunity to do all these coin plays that are like, because of the super cheap and fast network, it's a totally different meta game than you saw on Ethereum last cycle when DeFi was kind of new. And each chain is having its own version of these things, but I think the unique thing about PulseChain is how its tokenomics are such a major centerpiece of it, and distribution and holder counts, and you can get into the specifics of like how people use tax tokens or reflections or LP tokens to like give their coins different properties that can help fuel a certain sector of coins that then pumps another set of coins. And I mean, it's really abstracted away right there with that description, but yeah, PulseChain's awesome because like it gives people the ability to transact pretty freely and nobody's really priced out. So anybody can make a couple of plays on this chain and turn $1,000 into like $100,000 pretty easily. I would say over like just a couple months, it can be done. It's been done. Like a lot of these founders are creating coins that go up huge multiples. Like I don't even know how high PTGC is up right now. Let me check quick. I want to say it's up. I mean, from the very beginning, I think it's up like 214,000%. So it's like a 2,150x, I think is what that is. That's pretty damn good. And that's also down off its high. It's down 66% off its high, and that's against the dollar. So it even performed better, in my opinion, against PLS. Like the PLS chart's amazing, and I'll pull it up here in a little bit for you guys. But if I don't get this guy on here pretty soon, you guys will be wondering what the hell. So Hayden, what up, man? Happy to have you on the channel here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Been watching your channel for quite a long time. Don't chat too much in it, but obviously appreciate everything you've done for the PulseChain community and the Hex community.
Thanks, man. Thank you as well for what you've been doing for the PulseChain community and for the Hex community. I don't think it gets enough press. Just like kind of how well the things that you worked on and built out have done. And I can say that like, for example, the people in the boardroom, which is the axisALiVE community, we took the trade on PTGC even after it had already like moonshotted up. I think it moonshotted like 50, it says here 54,000%, and then it retraced on that first big retrace. I know you remember it. And it came down 81% against Pulse. And then when it recovered off that, it was like on December 9th or something, it broke out of that downtrend, and that's kind of where we all took that trade. And we wrote it up, man. There was like, people were getting like a 10x off that. And so something that's up so high and so quickly in the beginning of its price action, and then to see it continue to go on and do another 10x, that's really the kind of thing that you're looking for like something that's going to stay here for the long haul. And so maybe you wanted to touch on a little bit about your long-term vision on your development procedure. Like you're always looking forward. You're a business owner, so you understand that when you're in dev, especially with crypto, once you publish it to the blockchain, it's permanent. So you have to make sure that you're doing things once in the right way the first time. And so do you want to talk a little bit about the process of creating it in the beginning, and then we'll roll from there.
Yeah. So like what you kind of just brought up about how we had that big run up and then that drawdown, and once you and like maybe some other people started to notice that we were breaking out of that downtrend is where you guys got your position, and then also we ended up having another big run up. I believe that's where 99% of the tokens fail. So a lot of tokens get launched and they don't even get the big run up. A lot of other tokens launch, they get a big run up, but then they never come out of that downtrend and they just fall forever. And ultimately all that creates, that's most meme coins for an example, and all that creates is a couple guys made a shit ton of money and 99% of people just lost their money to those guys. And in my opinion, I don't like that part about the crypto space. I get that it's awesome for certain people who do get out with that being in that top 1%, but it really screws over a lot of people. So when I was kind of designing the projects that I create, I wanted to design things that didn't do that to people. And there was always something that was backing the project to create sustainability over time. And with PTGC and UFO, I really spent a lot of time studying, I would say 50, 100 different projects and looking at what I believed made them successful and what made them fail, and trying to really pull apart the parts out of it that I thought made them successful and then get rid of the parts that I think was what dragged them down a little bit or made them just fail completely in general. That was kind of a lot of what the build out of PTGC and UFO was just looking at tons and tons of different projects and really coming up with
you were looking at coins on like on Ethereum, of course, but any other chains, or was it you were just looking everywhere?
So because PTGC is a reflection token, for the most part, it's a reflection token with a reward system and staking, and then on top of that, a buy and burn. Yeah. One that I actually paid a lot attention to was SafeMoon, if you know that token.
Oh, yeah.
It was on BNB. Reason being is because BNB was pretty much an EVM chain that came out after Ethereum. It had a lot of smart contracts on it right when it came out, kind of similar to PulseChain. You know what I mean? When PulseChain came out, a lot of smart contracts came out. Their gas fees were cheap. So I believe like the scenarios were not the same, but similar enough to where I could kind of learn from it. And what I realized with, SafeMoon, for an example, of what I thought was one of the big failures of it is they were paying people reflections for people getting in, but everyone early actually over time just started selling those reflections into oblivion and taking profits. There was never actually anything going back into the system to support the chart over the long term. So for an example with PTGC, right off the bat, I knew there had to be a yin and a yang to it. So with every single transaction, 2% of that goes to giving rewards to holders and stakers. But then I also had to make sure that technically it's 3% because that's mainly what the DAO does. But the point of it being is there's more PLS going into the liquidity pools every time a transaction occurs than rewards being paid out.
Yeah.
So even if every single person cashed out all of their rewards on every single transaction every single week, there's always going to be more PLS getting put into the liquidity pool, making it so the rewards that are getting cashed out are actually always backed by more PLS going in. So like that's one small example of what I noticed and I tried to fix moving forward with the tokenomics of PTGC.
Nice. I love that. You always want to have, so this is just my kind of segue. I agree with you that you always want to have more value backing something over time than there is profit to take. And when you're having an inflation token, it even adds another element that needs to be calculated. And of course you figured it out. You just need to have more. So I think it's a base 6% tax, right? Or is it 5% on PTGC?
PTGC is a 5%.
So it's 5%. And so 3% of that's going into basically PLS going into the pool every time somebody sells or buys, right? Mm-hmm. Does that include sends too?
Correct. Yeah, and I can touch base on why that's needed. Also,
well, it also just simply like it creates a buffer too. Like it's if I mean, you may have another technical reason, but I'm just generally like if no matter what action you take in PTGC, there's a tax for that. It's kind of a good thing because it just gives more. It makes people have to think through what they're going to do with their coins more. Like if you're just going to willy-nilly send shit to like a million wallets and stuff, like there could be like negative downstream effects to that too. So like you want people to have to think really clearly about why they're sending something and where they're sending it. And I don't know if that has anything to do with part of that thought process or not, but just I think it's, in this case, it ended up working out. I don't know if it was the same for UFO. I think you might have changed something there, but
Yeah, it's also with send transactions also on UFO, but so there's two technical reasons why that had to occur. So when you're creating a smart contract, and I'll use Ethereum as an example, is what it became standardized in Ethereum is you would list like your main pairs that you're going to pair the token with, and you would add the fee to those pairs. And then when you did that, you wouldn't have send transactions. And a lot of people liked this idea because they wanted to send their tokens from wallet to wallet. But then there's these certain pairs like the ETH pair or the USDC pair that had the fees to it. But with PTGC, because we wanted to build a huge liquidity web, we could never list all of the pairs that we wanted to actually have the fee. So what we had to do is we had to just make sure that fee was on any transaction that could ever occur possibly, making it so where if anyone created a fee with any token that ever existed, there would always be that fee there no matter what. Because then what would happen is one pool would actually get created, and then that fee wouldn't actually happen in that pool, and then everyone would just trade out of that pool instead of hitting the main pool, and then the whole tokenomics don't even make sense anymore.
yep, makes sense.
This problem actually never was figured out on Ethereum because people didn't build webs on Ethereum, but we realized it when we were building PTGC, and we made sure. And then I watched a lot of people build tokens after mine and try to mimic what we created, but they didn't know about that mechanic in code. So they just kept building it like how they were used to building it on Ethereum, and then they'd launch, and then people would make pools that didn't obviously have the fee, and then the web would just never work. And I watched like 20 projects fail that way, but didn't really speak out too much about it.
That's good then. So I want to ask you a question about a coin that was made by Sunny, and tell me if this is possible technically. And so this is something that whoever's listening may be able to take advantage of this and create this coin or use this going forward, because I don't want to see this. People keep getting trapped in these coins that, and it's no knock on anybody. It's just like, as a designer, as a developer, let's like think through these things and try to make the best coins possible so they can perform the best for everybody. And so he made a coin called Hard, and it paid reflections in PDI for every transaction. And but the problem that I didn't like with that was, and this might be something that a lot of these tax coins suffer from, is like if I want to go in LP, I shouldn't be penalized to LP on a coin. Like I shouldn't get taxed to like try to support the system in my mind. And then I thought about it. I'm like, it makes sense now with your explanation of the send needing to be taxed to make sure that it doesn't break the web. Is it possible in that case then to change that so that, you know, when LPs are created and added and removed from, that isn't taxed, but it doesn't break the web?
Yeah, so UFO, I guess I'll talk about, so PTGC, you have to pay the tax when you add LP. PTGC is kind of a different monster because we provided all that liquidity and we burnt it all. So we didn't actually need people to help the system and provide LP, and I'll explain why I didn't really want people to provide liquidity and help the system that way, and we'd rather just put up all the money at the beginning to make it happen. This reason is because when you create a system and all that and whole entire system has protocol owned and burnt liquidity, that means every single PLS that ever goes into that liquidity web is only accessible by the people who actually own the PTGC token, or even the PDI or the teddy bear or the Wrap Bitcoin or PLSX. Just any token that's in there is actually only accessible by the protocol itself, which is burnt, so it's only accessible by PTGC holders. So as you grow that LP bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, no one can actually remove that LP from any of the users. All that backed value is only accessible by the PTGC token itself, which is hyper-deflationary. So with every single transaction, it actually becomes more valuable and more valuable. Mm-hmm. If you have people starting to add LP to the protocol, yes, that increases the LP itself, but what they're actually doing is they're getting a share of the LP pool. So then every user that comes in afterwards adds to that LP pool, which actually adds to this single person's wallet as well. So when the day comes that this user wants to exit his LP position, he's actually removing that backed value from the holders of the PTGC token ecosystem itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So like fundamentally, the aim with PTGC was to create a deep, a core amount of liquidity that's unchanging and always growing forever. That it creates like a pool that it grows at a faster rate. So it's basically a pond that turns into a pool that turns into like a lake that turns into an ocean. And no matter how much liquidity tries to be extracted from that, it's an imbalanced equation so that nobody's ever going to have enough PTGC to really extract the whole thing away. I mean, it makes sense. And it had to be done from the beginning, which is why I credited you for being forward thinking about these things. And that's another thing that I like to do too. I like to take my time and not launch anything without thinking things through. So I really appreciate that. And then the other thing is like high taxes. So like in the case of some of these coins, like if a tax is too high, you actually limit the arbitrage opportunity for bots, which decreases volume, which limits the amount of growth that a coin can have. And so like, you have these coins that have performed quite well. Let's see, even in like the low liquidity periods, like this thing did 500K over a month here. And then recently it's been somewhat low, but 650K over 38 days, a little over a month, even in the low liquidity times. And it's trading inside of like a, let's see what kind of a range we got here. It's like a 70% range. So there's opportunity in there and the volume's decent over a month's time. I mean, it's not tens of millions yet, but as this PulseChain grows and the bots are going to town, maybe 5% is low enough that arbitrage bots can find opportunities in something like this, like a 70% range over like a month time frame to trade up and down and bring volume to it and grow the liquidity pools and compound those LP rewards back into the pool, which gives PTGC holders more liquidity to pull from. But in the case of some of these coins, they go like, if you go too high, like it almost, the volume actually almost comes to a halt completely if no humans are interacting.
Yeah, I think the 5%'s on the higher end to where like I tried to hit like to where it still hits really often, because like you said, if it doesn't gap enough, because let's say it just rises and then falls back down at a 3%, well then it never even hits your arbitrage opportunity in your web and you didn't get any of that volume. So what I've noticed is when it's two tax tokens paired together at 5%, it actually barely ever hits your spread, because you have to use the tax of both tokens, and you actually need to multiply that by 2, because when the RBot wants to make that swap, it actually has to trade your tokens twice. So for an example, like if Teddy Bear went on a run and the Teddy Bear price in that LP pool moved the PTGC price up, it would actually then want to buy the PTGC in the cheaper pool and then sell it into the more expensive pool, the Teddy Bear pool. So it actually has to do 2 transactions at 5% to make that arbitrage situation happen. So you actually need a spread of roughly 10% to even make PTGC a profitable arbitrage opportunity. Now, once you like start, let's say you did a 10% tax token, well, now you would need 20%. And really at the end of the day, how often does that happen? Not that often. So that's why you end up with situations that when you have too high of tax, you actually don't get as much volume as you would think, because the arbitrage opportunities don't come about as often.
You would need, you just made me remember something. Like in order for like a really high tax to work efficiently and have a lot of volume, you have to have like really high volatility. Like you'd need to be seeing 10 to 20% swings per day, like to make sure that and that, which would imply that the liquidity would have to be pretty low. So it's not, there is like a silver line there in token development, especially when you're talking these tax tokens, that you need to ride so that the liquidity can grow over time and the tax is still meaningful enough to give rewards to holders, but not so much that it inhibits volume. So, props to you for doing the math, man, and figuring this stuff out.
Yeah. And then and back to, like you said, like you need not a lot of liquidity to make volatile movements, but like for an example, with these liquidity web structures, we actually want the most liquidity possible, because the more liquidity we have in our web, now the R bots have to move more money to fix the pools. If you don't have a lot of liquidity in the pools, the R bot actually doesn't need to move that much money to fix the pool. So the larger we can make these pools, the R bot now needs to move that much more money, which then means we get to tax the R bot that much more. So that's like one of the cool features about that's one of the untapped in features about PTGC and UFO that no one even recognizes really yet, is because PulseChain is obviously half a SAC rate, but right now we have like $1.5 million in each PTGC and UFO. But let's say, for an example, the PLS ecosystem goes up 100x this bull run. Well, automatically RLP pools will go up 100x as well, because PLS went up 100x. So then now the R bots are going to have to move 100x more the amount of money to fix the LP pools. So now that the R bots have to move 100x more the amount of money, we are now taxing the R bots 100x more the amount of money, which means that we're buying and burning our own supply and adding LP at 100x the rate, and we're paying APR at 100x the rate. If PLS ecosystem as a whole goes up 100x.
100x. And I mean, even just on a 10x, it's still a really good value prop. Like you don't even have to get, like, that's why what I think makes PulseChain so uniquely positioned. I mean, this is me kind of like fanboying over PulseChain here for a second, is it's literally just a better Ethereum. Technically, it's just a better Ethereum. We all loved Ethereum. I still like the idea of Ethereum, but PulseChain is home for me now. And so like even on like a 10 or a 20x, a lot of us, yourself, myself, some of these other guys that are out here in my group, like we've been accumulating and making plays on the PulseChain for over a year now. And so we've been able to amass these bags. And so like for a lot of us, a 10 and a 20x puts us in a whole other category. And I'm not saying that in the perspective of like somebody new coming in isn't getting opportunity. I'm saying that there's still so much opportunity left because it's so early, in terms of like how much even a 10 or 20x can be meaningful for somebody just getting in today. And the reason why is because of coins like this that are paying you yield. Like it's yield, but it's not yield in something that's illiquid. It's yield in something that's actually going to have sustainable backing value. And it's partly due to what you started the conversation, which was that through that 3% that's getting put back into a PLS that's getting put back into pools overrides the 2% getting paid to holders. That simple as that. Like, look, you're basically putting your money where it's going to help more people than where it's going to help less people. And that's honestly all it takes, is just good, well thought out situations like that. So
well, one of the craziest parts, one of the hardest things for me to figure out even with this protocol, was most of the demise of reflection tokens is volume going down. So once we figured out this liquidity web scenario and how the liquidity web will constantly give volume no matter what, we now eliminated the one failing factor of reflection tokens. And PulseChain actually created this opportunity. Was PulseChain gave now this weird opportunity where there's this weird niche now to where reflection tokens and buy and burn tokens and auto LP adding tokens via fee structures can actually really flourish and start outperforming the whole entire market. And what makes this really, really cool is, since everything in crypto is actually connected via LP, like even in forms, the stock market's kind of connected to Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin's kind of connected to Ethereum, and then Ethereum's connected to PulseChain. So when you actually look at that as a whole, PTGC and UFO, because the liquidity web factor actually brings in value from the whole entire market in general, not even just the crypto market, the whole entire world market in general. It actually scrapes in value from everything moving up and down and brings that value back to one token in general, and that's PTGC and UFO. And as the liquidity pools get bigger and bigger and bigger, it actually brings in more value and more value and more value. And the cool thing about this is there's not too many guarantees in the markets, like in the crypto market. You can't really guarantee this or that, but the one thing you can guarantee is the markets move up and down. So what we noticed was, if we could take advantage of the markets moving up and down and just use that to bring value back to one asset, we can actually ensure a utility that is ever growing and never stopping. So now as the market moves up and down, we don't care which way it goes. We obviously prefer it going up, but even if it goes down, the whole entire market, we get to capitalize on that market shift and bring that value back to PTGC and UFO, ensuring our community that they're in the right spot, which is literally a gift from RH itself, because no other blockchain has really given these opportunities before. And we have them here on PulseChain. And I honestly believe once PLS starts moving up in price a little bit and our LP pools naturally grow and people get a little bit more of a positive sentiment instead of just being bummed all the time,
Yeah.
a lot of other people from other chains are going to realize that we actually have these weird scenarios over here that is just life-changing. Like literally these scenarios have never been around before and no one realizes it yet. And when the crypto industry realizes like the stuff we're dealing with over here, like what I just talked about, that literally we are taking fees and value from the whole entire market going up and down, not just PulseChain, like Ethereum, just as everything moves around, it waves down to us. Everything's connected via liquidity, and we bring that value back to singular tokens. Like this is the only blockchain that stuff is happening on.
Yeah. So this is something that I focused on with Axis, which is, my method was a little bit different, but making sure that value gets stored there. And like my method of it was making sure that it's super scarce. The only way to like guarantee success is like, in my mind, when I was starting off, was like, it has to be ultra scarce so that as long as there's one man that wants to protect it, it can be done. And it's a totally different economic setup than what PTGC is doing. But they've both proven to be effective, but they just require different conditions to make them come to fruition. I just thought, like, when PTGC launched, was it like announced or something ahead of time, or did you stealth launch it, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so really I didn't even have like a real crypto Twitter at all, even when I started building this stuff. So even the fact that I launched it, just no one even knew who I was. So I met Coach in a Spaces call, and I'm sure a lot of people in here know who Coach is.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually let me know about like the PDI and Atropa thing very early, because he lives like 10 minutes from me. So we're actually friends outside of crypto. But he introduced me to the Atropa and PDI, and I've been working on this project for technically like years at this point.
Really? Okay. So this is something that you've been thinking about a lot longer than, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It also explains why this worked, right?
Yeah.
So you know what? I'm pissed now, because I'm like, dude, somebody should have been like on that second move, on this move right here. It was very evident to me that there was something more going on. And it's like, no, the dude that built it been thinking about this for like 3 years.
Yeah, I studied tons of different tokens. Like I studied Hex, and like not to say that there's anything wrong with Hex, but I took things that I thought was currently bringing it down, like the inflation and um, people not willing to buy it, and then a lot of people that got in early just constantly selling it, and none of that value actually going back to support the project.
Yeah.
So I took some of those features, and I didn't want to go up against those hurdles. I don't have ridiculous amounts of capital like RH and stuff like that, and I don't have as big a voice as RH. Obviously, he has different tools that he could pull on than I had, but I didn't want to go over those hurdles. So that was, one of the big things I limited. I was like, dude, I don't want to give APR based on inflation. That's going to be a really hard hurdle to tackle over time. So let me do it this way, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I looked at hundreds of different tokens and studied each one. And
I
really,
like that way you said that, dude. I don't think you understand how smart that is. Like you said, I wanted to give APR in a different way than just straight up inflation. Like that's probably one of the biggest nuggets so far that you've dropped. Because the guys that are actually taking that words of wisdom and applying it to their projects are going to be the successful ones. There are ways to benefit your users and pay them without directly giving them new coins. And this guy just proved it. And soon there'll be others that'll come and prove the same thing. So that's pretty awesome. Hey, I was looking at this liquidity chart here. Oh yeah, go ahead. As I say, I was looking at this liquidity chart here, and it's like, look, guys, this was the beginning of PTGC. By the way, props to you for launching the original pool on V1. So that means that the grays are also helping buy and burn PulseX. In all of this web, it's helping the whole network be more valuable, not just the grays ecosystem, because this major pool with 600K in it, this thing is on PulseX V1, meaning it's buy and burning the shit out of PulseX. And that's on behalf of these bots that are in these taxes that's built into this thing. And so on the surface, I think there was a lot of uneducated hate toward this project and any tax project or reflections project, because we had this stigma coming from Ethereum where these types of projects were done the wrong way. And in this case, they did it the right way. They made tax token make sense and pay their users in a way that's sustainable. And that's the key thing, is sustainable. And so here I was just showing these guys the liquidity over time on the OG pool here. This is V1, and I guess this would be all the pools on V1. But I mean, look, this was your first base, and then there was that first run up, and then like our guys were getting in here. I think this was in December. Let me just double check here. One sec. Yeah, so this is how much upside this thing has had in terms of TVL locked in this thing. Like not many people knew about it here, let's say, but this is where the market figured it out. And then we saw this big upside here. And now look, we're just coming back down to create a new bottom. And then, it's gonna repeat all over again.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that like bottom and that high of the liquidity is that high of the liquidity is just because PLS was up a 4x than it is right now.
Yep,
so
and I can prove it right now.
Yeah.
I'll prove it for them, which is like, okay, here's the dollar chart, and you're in this giant falling wedge. We've broken out of that wedge, and we came back down, and we didn't even back test the falling wedge. You just kind of bounced here and at this kind of level here. And now if I flip this to Pulse, I mean, it's right up there at the highs. And so like, I mean, how many times you get viewers, how many times do I come on these streams and say, forget about pricing things in dollars. It doesn't matter. If you're on PulseChain, fundamentally, you understand you're backed by billionaires, and the PulseChain valuation is at least going to go up 10x from here. At least. All right. If you aren't coming in with that base case, go trade somewhere else. Go invest somewhere else. Because like that's where like the people that are here playing, we understand that, right? That this chain is going to be worth more. So you should be pricing your coins in Pulse. And PTGC, for example, way up here in the skylights is, down 17% and up thousands and thousands and thousands of percent, right, from the base. So, yeah, that looks a lot different than the dollar chart, right? We're right up here. Let me go down to a daily. It's just retesting the breakout level. So broke out, made a new high against Pulse, come back to retest, and now it's trying to flip this yellow dashed line of support. Looks really good. This is a coin that continues to be worth more pulse. So that's why you see on the TVL here, yeah, it's down in dollars, but this is the magic that people like that are building these coins. What they're doing is they understand the math of it's coin A versus coin B. It's not dollars and cents, but they understand how to make sure that once Pulse does go up in price, these TVLs moon.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what I was talking about. If Pulse, and you said 10x, you know, I'd be happy with a 10x also. I'd be happy with a 50x, 100x, whatever it does. But ultimately, when that time does come, the mathematic structure of PTGC and UFO is really when it starts to succeed, and which is crazy to think about, because if you look at our chart against PulseChain, it looks like we've succeeded, but nothing has actually even been turned on yet. Because once PulseChain actually goes up multiple X's, our web structure will kick into high gear, and it will multiply our buy and burn and our LP add and our reward structure by 10x, 20x, 50x, 100x. Like, you could even start saying some crazy moon boy stuff if you think PulseChain's going to like 1000x or something like that. Our liquidity X, or our liquidity web, does those same amount of X's, and now our buy and burn rate does those X's. Our liquidity ads do those X's, and so does our reward structure, which, in my opinion, would probably make us one of the highest yield protocols of all time. Like any blockchain, if you started to increase it by 100x, it would just be insane. But
yeah, I wonder if the price of I saw so this is all like really, really good, and if the same thought process was deployed on Ethereum, obviously you'd run into like a gas problem. But on this chain, on 100x, I don't think the gas fees are even there yet to the point where it stops the chain from being effective. Like, basically, you can't, correct me if I'm wrong, but this coin wouldn't work as well on Ethereum if it was launched even in the same exact way because of the gas fees. Is that correct or no?
gas. So PTGC was launched first on Ethereum, and it failed due to the structure does not work with high gas fees.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of functions that operate within PTGC. It's a very complex code, so it's actually pretty high gas intensive. There's staking involved, locking involved. There's a full decentralized and automated DAO that obviously you have to do transactions on the blockchain to interact with. And that gives you some flexibility to where the community can, you know, decide, hey, we want to add LP in this direction. Oh, we want to add LP in this direction. Oh, we just want to do buy and burns right now. But on Ethereum, stuff like this cost dollars, $10, $20, $100 to do. And even this takes into consideration, like, that's why these LP webs don't work that well on Ethereum, because the arbitrage opportunities get mostly eliminated because of the gas fees on Ethereum. So, like, over here, the gas fees cost, you know, 2 cents to do a transaction. So it's all profits for the arbitrage bot. But on Ethereum, since the transaction costs $10, $20, $50, $100 sometimes to do a swap, you've now just eliminated any possible ability for the AMM bot to actually make money. So it's just not going to do it.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, then I'd even on like 100x. Now, I don't know if the price of Pulse could go so high that it would break these kinds of coins, but it's definitely probably something that an investor might want to consider, or maybe you could calm their concerns of it somehow.
Well, if PulseChain, this is like imaginary horribles. Richard Hart kind of brings that up all the time. If PulseChain 100x's and we turn our swaps from 1 penny, I need to look how the code really works with like how gas fees raise, because I don't know if they completely raise just based on the price going up, because it might actually work in dollar terms. So it might just cost less tokens as the price goes up, and it would still only cost a penny. And I think that's how Ethereum works. I could be wrong. The only thing that actually will increase the price is not the price of PLS going up, but more users on PLS. So
It's been pretty stable around like 14,000, I think, users active for per day. Let's check.
Yeah. So really the PLS price going up, I don't think will ruin the cost. More just if tons of people coming in will make the cost go up.
Yeah.
And ultimately we have a lot of room we can run to where gas starts costing $1. Like if we 100x our daily volume, like PulseChain would be so crazy successful and gas fees would still be a 20th of the cost of Ethereum that situations like that would not even be relevant. Like at that point, PTGC and UFO would have like $150 million in liquidity
And
bonding with.
we've seen this before with things like Wise token on Ethereum that locked a bunch of ETH liquidity in from the early days of when it launched. This was like in 2019 or 2020, early on, and that thing's got like $64 million of liquidity in it. And yeah, so it had its own flaws, but this concept of a pool that gets locked for long enough, inflating to this massive dollar valuation is true. It happened before, and it was with Wise token. So
Well,
it's basically there's just a few guys that have any Wise left that are staked that can basically use that as their own personal piggy bank for the rest of time, basically.
well, so like this is kind of like one of those ideas that still hasn't been touched. Like, so with liquidity, having a ton of liquidity is sometimes a negative thing if you're trying to pump the price because you have to then put so much more money in to get the price up. But if you have low liquidity, it's easy to pump the price. So some people are like, oh, low liquidity is sometimes good if you want to pump the price, where I completely believe in that 100% in the situation that you're not making money off of a liquidity web. But actually, when you're making money off a liquidity web, you want those liquidity pools to be as big as possible because the bigger you make these liquidity webs, you actually create a system that you no longer even need a human interaction with the protocol because the protocol actually generates all its own money and that money constantly gets reinvested into the protocol, forcing the price up faster than any human interaction could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I think about this in terms of like the solid index and kind of how that's set up. And there's like, I think there's like over $1 million of liquidity on the 2 solid pool over there, and so that's already set up nicely. But and I mean, there's like another million or 2 million on 9inch and millions on PulseX, and so there's already the web there. And all we would need to do, I think, is inject a tax coin, right? Not saying that this is in progress. I mean, this is my first time ever talking about this ever with anybody. But theoretically, you could apply the learnings from PTGC or some other system like it, or just bond the index to PTGC and get like these same kind of outcomes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So really the web structure, in my opinion, only makes complete sense if you have a fee token connected with it. Because if you don't have the fee token connected with it, the R bots are moving tons of money around with no fee to move the money around. So they're actually making money on the LP you're
They're not
providing.
leaving any residual value where they went to. They've only
Exactly.
fully extracted. So yeah, that's smart.
100%.
It's almost like a protection mechanism it's almost like it should be a requirement for all tokens or all liquidity webs to have some form of this
It's pretty
active.
much the gas fee. You know what I mean? That's pretty much that there. So like liquidity providers, I guess, get a little bit of money, but it just isn't. It's just so micro compared to what we're scraping from them.
Yeah.
The only other benefit in like non-tax liquidity providing with liquidity webs is now you're like with PTGC, we attach to all of the blue chips or what we believe to be a lot of the blue chips at that time. This is 8 months ago. Since then, there's been a lot of projects that have came out and, you know, different ones that we just didn't recognize at the time. But the ones we had recognition of at the time, we connected to it. And what that actually creates is it's almost like in a diversified investment account with all of the blue chips because we get the gains of all of those blue chips when they move up. PTGC gets tied up due to Hart's law, but then the other side of it is we're also taxing it at the same time. So it's like a win-win. So a non-tax token can also do this. they can connect to all the blue chips of PulseChain. And then what you're doing is you're pretty much creating a diversified investment account into all the blue chips of PulseChain just with one token. So if one runs, you get the gains of that. And then if one falls, you obviously get the losses of that. But it more diversifies the investment to all of them. So it kind of evens itself out a little bit more. So a non-tax token can do that, and you can get like all the runs. So like you get the runs of PDI, you get the runs of Teddy, you get the runs of PLSX instead of just being tied to PLS. Because at the end of the day, like if you were only tied to PLS at this point instead of creating a web, you actually hurt yourself because PLS hasn't done anything. And when you tie yourself to leverages on leverages, like for an example, if someone tied themselves to PTGC, well, PTGC is a leverage on PLS and the whole entire PLS ecosystem. So every injection of value into PLS, as PLS moves up in price, it automatically tugs PTGC up in price because we're just such a small cup compared. We're a cup compared to a pool. But then, so if PLS moves up 10x, we get tugged up 10x, no problem. We're so small. It's like RH uses this example. It's a dog wagging its tail. The tail can't wag the dog has to wag the tail. So PLS is the dog, we're the tail. It just wagged us up. But then on top of that, if anyone comes that went into PLS that moves the PLS price up, now those people can then come down into PTGC and then move PTGC's price up again. So we actually get a double dip effect. So then if someone then connected themselves down one more level just to PTGC, if that whole drip effect happened twice, they would actually make it happen 3 times. They would go, okay, PLS moves up, you get those gains. Okay, PTGC moves up, you get those gains. And then if that person dropped down from PTGC into the next token, they would then get those gains times 3. And that's how those leverage plays work. They're just leverage plays on each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've seen that before where we look at the correlations matrix on PulseChain, and you look at the different ecosystems, they pop off at different times. Like when PDI was ripping back here, PLS was shitting the bed. Like it had just broke down it broke down here. Actually, it was on the 30th of July or something like that. When the SEC crash happened and PLS crashed like 60% in one candle, the price of PDI mooned back the other way within a day or two. And so we've seen this like this negative correlations on different assets. And so there's like a positive side to being connected to everything, and there's a negative side to it. The positive side to it is if you have something like a tax token built into it, it's only going to grow. Like I should say, the liquidity pools of that tax token is only going to grow from all of the activity of being tied to things. Whenever this thing's moving up, this thing may be flat or moving down, and then just the volatility. It's more of like a star that's gaining mass and exploding and getting bigger and bigger and bigger forever, just because of the activity of these bots flowing and energy flowing in between these pools. But if you're only tied into like one, like what you're saying is that if you're only tied into like one pool, like PLS, and PLS isn't performing and there's no volume there right now, then you're kind of just left hanging loose and you're hurting unless somebody's directly injecting capital into that coin. That coin's not going to get any benefit from that.
Well, and let's be honest, there's no one on Pulse right now for the most part injecting money. It's pretty dead. Everyone's pretty broke. So luckily for PTGC, we're pulling obviously profits from the web that we have built. And that was like one of the main ideas there is we need a utility that actually doesn't need any human interaction. We need utility that is only reactionary based on how much money we've put into the system, our liquidity web. The bigger we make the liquidity web, the more value we get on a daily basis just from our machine doing its thing. But human interaction, that's a harder thing to control. You know, you don't know if the market's going to shift down and people get scared and pool money or don't even inject money at all. Right now, everyone on PulseChain isn't really injecting money too much. Volume is down on the whole entire chain because the price is down. There's not many new users coming in. So you kind of have to look outside the box a little bit and be like, okay, well, what can I do to create a system that we can actually control? because in crypto and just in markets in general, there's so many things that you can't control. You have to kind of look at the things what you can control and then capitalize on those things.
I'm with you, man. You took the learnings from where Hex had its failure points, which was, you know, humans. There wasn't any of this going on. There just wasn't this level of granularity and thought process put into the tokenomics. I mean, so here's a good segue. I'm wearing a Hex hat. I still think Hex has huge upside potential. That said, the reason why everything else seems to be performing and it isn't is because of the wrong people got the capital and then people stopped buying, right? Or at some point there was like not enough buyers to support the network. Now I think it's just bad sentiment, and there's so many other things that are popping off with new charts. Like it's not attractive right now. Long-term investing in crypto, that they just like they're counter to each other. And so, not that I'm saying that that's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. I've done 15-year stakes this year. But that said, like, it's just not exciting. And so, like, what's going to make Hex exciting again is price performance. But you need billionaire energy to make that a reality for something as big as Hex. And so, I you know, hats off to you for being able to pull this off and have it so that it's automated in a way that, you know, you put the nut down up front when you launched it, and it's just going to continue to grow and grow. And so as long as you guys, and when I say you guys, I mean like the top, let's say a couple hundred holders of PTGC, for example, hold all the PTGC and are staked and earning more of it. As long as you guys stay above board and you keep having more of those coins, that'll be an infinite piggy bank. Don't fall into the trap of what happened to the wise guys, where they all dumped their coins. This is a many-year-old chart now. This chart is 1,200 days old. And I mean, price performance, it's down in dollar terms 70%. It's up 170%, but there's not many people that have any of these coins anymore because they dumped them all into the liquidity pool. So most of the wise supply, I'm talking like 97% of the wise supply, is sitting in this liquidity pool, and it's paired up against 31,000 ETH. That means that this liquidity pool, this is a $200 million pool. $200 million pool. $100 million of that is ETH, wrapped Ether. And so for the guys that still have the 3% of the supply of this coin, they have an infinite money printer here. The problem is, like, they gave too much of their wise up too soon, and this is a game of attrition. And this particular coin has like a long-term staking mechanic in it. So those guys that are going to be ending stakes in a few years, like, they could be pulling off like 6 figures, like nothing, maybe even 7 figures if they have enough. If their 3% is still worth, you know, a decent amount. Now, if I measure this against ETH, this is what they're up against. Is this thing has only ever went down against ETH. So so the coins, if you're the last man standing with all the units, but it's still not worth a lot of ETH, the only way that you're getting this ETH out of this pool is by buying it off the market, buying the ETH with wise. But if nobody has any wise, how do you buy the ETH out of this pool? It's such a screwed up situation. And so, like, this is one of my fears, and I don't know if this is any help to you at all or not, but I just want this to be a consideration of the community to, like, think about. Don't give up all your PTGC, because you're going to need it to get at that $200 million someday. So
yeah, one of the things that I realized was kind of going back to just studying tons of projects is, so a lot of tokens out there, as they 100x or 50x or 1000x, once they do that, people realize that there's no other reason to hold that token anymore. So what they do is they actually start extracting the value from that token, and then they go and put that money in a place that they can actually use that money to make more money. So one of the things that I tried to design with the APR of PTGC and UFO is we had to make a place to where once we run that 100x, 200x, 300x, 1000x, whatever we end up doing, that when we do that, the place to make the APY to have your money actually work for you, because that's actually financial freedom, is having a place to where the money that you make is actually making you more money. So you're not trading your time for money anymore. You're just making your money make you more money. That's all in house. You don't actually have to sell the token to now make yourself passive income. I'm going to use Teddy Bear as an example, not to throw it under the bus, but once Teddy Bear 1000x's or 100x's from here, you can't actually use your Teddy Bear to make you more money. The only thing you can do with that token is sell it to get money.
Yes.
But with PTGC UFO and other yield-bearing protocols, Hex, for an example, you can use these assets to actually generate you more money. That was one of the best things about Hex, in my opinion, was there is a use case to make you more money by holding it. If you're not holding it, you can't make yourself more money.
Yeah. And so this is awesome. And you're right that, you know, the Atropo web is interesting because it's got it does have a couple farms on 9-inch, but generally there's not a lot of other yield opportunities unless it's just from, I'm trying to think of, like, if you put some in a, I don't think you can get enough supply of many of the Atropo coins to even get a meaningful LP position put up to earn anything there. There may be some plays on like 9mm doing some asymmetric liquidity plays with Atropo coins over there to earn fees, or
I could be wrong. I'm not like a big V3 liquidity person, but if you did that and Teddy Bear went on a crazy run, because it's consolidated liquidity providing, it would exit you out of your position pretty quickly, right?
yeah. So the way that you'd handle this would be, like, if you didn't want to lose all your bear, like, what you'd do is you'd set up like an infinite range. Like, you could basically cap the downside so that you could get all into bear and all out of whatever else you're trading against. Let's say Pulse, for example. By the way, is it a bad thing if you're all out of your bear, but you 500x'd your in Pulse, but you lost the other 500x of, so you got an impermanent loss of 500x, but you're up 500x? I don't know. Those are the interesting things to think about. But yeah, you can set like a capped lower end and then an infinite upper end, so that you could basically earn, you know, fees at like
that
a
was my
1% or
thing.
a
Is would
2%.
it would, because I would be afraid of it naturally exiting me out of that consolidated range. And then after it passes out of that range, obviously you've now exited your whole position, so you can't earn any more yield. But I guess you're right. You could just make that range infinite to where it never exits you out of it, and you just
So
get a
there's that,
little.
and then there's like the
less
fact that you just need to
consolidated.
actively manage the positions on there more. So like, you're looking at a guy that's done like hundreds of V3 positions. Like, there's so much metagame just on 9mm. That protocol is awesome because, like, V3 protocols are awesome because they do give you this extra control on more levers to pull to do different strategies and different time frames. And so there, but generally, I think it is nice to have these other alternative options, like, that give you the ability to go to buy something, and then you can stake it or not stake it, but you're able to earn money, right? So the one way we tackled that was we have the 9-inch farms for the solid index, and then that's paying like anywhere from 45% to like 85% on your any of the index tokens, plus you could pair them with BBC, Pulse, or 9-inch. And so I think that those create some powerful combinations, and those APRs are decent. Like, I don't know where PTGC stands up in terms of like $8 terms APR. I like over like on a rolling basis, but that's kind of what we're getting on the 9-inch farms. But then if you don't like 9-inch, or like you want to try something bigger, you can go to the 2 solid pool on 2fucks or fucks.io and 2fucks, and that's paying like 80% right now. And so I think like these coins that have earning potential, this is just a segue into this conversation about these coins that have earning potential, like the PTGC ecosystem, like the solid index. That, I don't even know if the market is even pricing that in. I think there's so many people on PulseChain that are just not, they bought their sack bags and they're just sitting on them and they never touched them. There's so many of those people. And then there's like the whatever, the 10,000 of us that gets on every day and plays the game. But yeah, I think like for founders, like for us, like it's important. And this is something that, you know, what's it like being a dev? Well, we're always trying to find ways to add value to the thing, to give it more utility. So if there's like a few different dexes you can go and earn yield, or if there's a staking mechanic that you can earn yield, or there's like stuff that I want to talk about but can't talk about that can give you control over the market to give your users more value. Like it's a constantly evolving thing, and because of those cheap fees on PulseChain, it's like the perfect place to pull this off, way ahead of the core assets mooning. Like they're basically, RH gave us a year, or the market really, you know, by dumping the price down and not knowing what they hold, gave founders a year and a half maybe, just to play these things out and get our foundations and our bases set and rock solid. So dude, I'm totally looking forward to seeing where all this goes. I think it's a bright future. Are you guys planning to build more on top of this? What does the next like 12 months look like for you, for the PTGC team?
So what the most recent thing we built on top of it was UFO.
Mhm.
And what we realized, like, because kind of this whole build out thing of building this on PulseChain, I mathematically knew what it was going to do, but it hadn't actually happened yet. So I wanted to do it and then watch it happen. And then once it was proving what mathematically I thought would happen actually was happening, then I was like, okay, I know what's going on here. How can I improve this? And UFO ultimately, in my opinion, I saw what was working so well with PTGC, and it was the LP web. The LP web with the fees was generating so much value to the protocol. I decided that I could actually incentivize people to add their own RH tickers to the web and incentivize them by doing so by paying them in PLS. So that's what UFO is it's ultimately a conglomerate of everyone who owns UFO can now pair their UFO with any of their RH tickers. And since I give them the option of 7, they actually, without even knowing it, make their own liquidity web. So when they're doing this, they're actually creating their own liquidity web, and that liquidity web is actually generating their own fees. So with a normal farm, they usually pay out in an incentive or an inflationary token, and as more people come in, you get technically less APY because you have to share that quantity with more people. But with this simulation, every person that comes into this farm actually is earning all their own rewards because they're all landing in a different part of the liquidity web, making the liquidity pools bigger. And the bigger these liquidity pools get, the more money the RBots have to move, which then in turn pays out more money to the users. And the cool thing about that is when I built this on top of PTGC, I included a fee that is a 1% buy and burn of PTGC. So automatically, when we created UFO and it was successful, UFO has more liquidity in it than PTGC right now. So UFO technically is buying and burning more PTGC than even PTGC itself. So we've now created another tool on top of PTGC that's actually making it even more valuable, with everyone who's participating in it earning PLS with all the RH tickers that they already hold in their wallets for the last year as well.
Gotcha. That's pretty awesome. And it's good to know that you guys got your head on straight and in the right place. Yeah, man, I'm excited for you guys. It's awesome to see the stuff working out. You proved me wrong, and I always thought, you know, tax tokens were a joke, but someone just needed to do them right to prove, you know, to show the way, right? And that's what you guys did. So, man, that's awesome. Hey, let's see. Did somebody have a question? I think somebody had a question in here. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe not. So I don't know. How do you want to round out? Is there anything that you wanted to talk about before we kind of like round out and close down in particular?
I feel like we've hit a lot of the topics. Like you just said, I think in the past, all reflections or buy and burns or LP tokens were just done wrong. And I'm thankful that RH just gave me an opportunity to make these projects flourish, because even though they look like they're flourishing already, like you as a founder, me as a founder, and we know the blockchain that we have built on is undervalued, which then makes the things that we have built undervalued. Because what we're technically doing is we're like, since you're from the States, like we're building the new store, the new restaurant in Austin, Texas or Dallas, Texas before it boomed.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there's no actually activity in these cities, but we're building the restaurant, we're getting them all souped up, and then when the city booms, our freaking stores are going to skyrocket. And that's all we're doing right now. And like you were just saying, RH gave us a year and a half, 2 years. The more time he gives us, the more our stores are going to get built out. The bigger our liquidity is going to be, the more users we're going to have. It just makes us stronger. So the fact that he didn't like rush us into like a plague of people and a plague of money just getting flooded into our ecosystem ultimately makes all the builders here even stronger.
100%. Absolutely agree with that. And it's given me time to like teach the market as well, because part of my educational thing is like you've been able to teach people the importance of measuring their value against the RH core assets. Like first and foremost, like don't measure your value in dollars if you can help it. I know a lot of people look at dollars, but the reality that we're moving toward in the future is where you're denominating your world in all sorts of commodities. It's not really going to look like, you know, if you haven't already gotten this point, I might be already speaking to the choir already, where like you guys already get that, you know, a decade ago, you could buy a house for like 20 Bitcoins, or even go far enough back, it was like hundreds or thousands of Bitcoins to buy a home. And now it's like a couple Bitcoins, 2-3 Bitcoins, you can buy a home, a small one. You throw 5 or 10 Bitcoins at it, you can buy a mansion, right? And like that is the world being redenominated by the power of the blockchain. And so like I urge everybody to start pricing things, and the things that are overperforming the core gas token, it's either ETH or Pulse or Bitcoin. Like Axis token went up, you know, a shitload against Pulse. The dollar chart looks like boring and flat right now, but that's not because Axis is underperforming. That's because Pulse and Solid X are underperforming currently. Like against Pulse, we're up and we're climbing and we're up into the right here. This is against Pulse. Since it bottomed here on the 30th of March, it's currently up 78%, and it was as high as 124% just a few days ago.
Yeah, that
So
chart's amazing. Can you
thank
zoom
you.
out a little bit for me?
Yeah, I'll zoom out there. We can go really far back. We can go back to the beginning if you want against Pulse. I mean, it's.
I'm just going to get jealous if you go back to the beginning. So
Yeah, let's not do that. Well, and so, you know, I'm so proud of this chart, and I'm not going to let go. I'm going to hold on to it, man. Like this thing is, it would be so cool if this thing could go to 1 billion Pulse and sustain that kind of price. You know,
really,
it's
at the
not
end
that
of the
far
day,
away.
that's like what it takes is just someone being benevolent and wanting it to succeed. It's like amazing in crypto how many people like launch stuff and they just really don't care, or they want it to succeed, but they're like not willing to like put any effort in. And like, I don't know, in the outside world, that's just like irrelevant. Like, I have a structural steel company, and ultimately, it didn't start producing real profits for 6 years. And I lived inside the shop for 6 years until it actually started providing for my family. Like, that's how long it took to grow that business from scratch, to where like I funded it by working 2 jobs. So like if you look at crypto, like people give up with something in 2 days. Like they'll launch something like, oh, I didn't get the adoption. It's like, well, what did you expect? You didn't have any effort there.
There's no patience. It's all immediate gratification. If you're here and you're like Hayden, or you're like me, and you're in this for the long haul, you are going to win. Crypto is a game of attrition. Our charts are proof of it, that if you care about your users and you are there, going to be the last man there to buy the rest of your shit up, this shit's going to do good. You start adding utility on top of it. In addition to that, the sky's the limit, man, on PulseChain, exclusively on PulseChain for PulseChain, man. I'm a PulseChain believer for sure. So keep measuring these coins against Pulse. See who's performing well. You know, align yourself with good founders that have a long-term vision and a long time horizon. People that worked 2 jobs to build out a business for 6 years to see their first profits flow through. I was one of them that I didn't do for 6 years. I ran a Bitcoin mine for a few years, and that is a competitive market, super competitive and hard to run profitably. And so when I had my chance to exit that, to start my journey in DeFi, basically, I did that. But I was working 2 jobs and trying to run the mine when all that was going down. And so I'm so glad to be over with that phase, because my only other option was to go bigger, to go more into debt, have more investor commitments. And that's not what I got into crypto for. I got into crypto to have passive income and be free of the shackles of the system that doesn't serve us anymore. Our dollar does not go as far as it did in the 1950s. When our grandparents were raising families, a hamburger at McDonald's was like 20 cents or something. Nowadays, like a Big Mac meal is like $15 or something crazy. I don't know if it's really that bad, but it's like $10 probably, $12. And it's like, I'm in this game for the long term, because I know, because of the imbalance of how many dollars are being created and how corrupted the American system is, the only alternative is to find a commodity that you believe in. And now with the power of PulseChain and the blockchain, we can create our own forms of value. I wouldn't even call it necessarily money, because value has so many different forms. But then that's what's so magical about these coins. And I'm so excited to be here. I'm leaving this conversation now super excited to get back to work, and I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it too.
All righty, guys. Well, next time we're going to have, we'll have you on again, but we'll also bring on maybe Coach next time, and we'll just go even deeper into specifics and like maybe future game plan or something as you're getting ready to launch the next big thing.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I know one thing Coach is going to start doing, if you ever want to hop in, is he's going to start doing like a Sunday, just like, what would the best word? Just kind of like a few people on the live stream where there's like 6 guys and we're talking Atropa, PDI, DeFi, Axis token, PTGC, just all of the PulseChain just in general on Sundays. So if you ever want to hop in there too, just reach out to him, because
yeah, yeah, for sure. I would love to do that. 100% would love to be there.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be every week or anything, but if you ever have a free Sunday, just send the DM and get in there.
I will. Yeah, Coach, if you're listening, I know you were in here earlier. Text me on the side and we'll get something going. I'll show up. I think this weekend I got a graduation party, but definitely I'll hit you up on one of these in the future here soon. All right, man. Thank you so much for your time and for all your knowledge and wisdom. And I hope everyone here learned something amazing. I know I got reinvigorated, and I'm excited to see you guys next time. All right.
Cool. Thanks, Axis.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.